Baltimore students who failed their classes will still get a passing grade, Blue's Clues goes woke, and we have Iranian warships transferring mysterious cargo to Venezuela. And I have a lot to say about that. Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Before we get into our lead story today, please take a moment right now to hit that like button. It really does help the YouTube algorithm push my video out there to viewers who have not seen my content or my channel. And if you want to support a new conservative talk show like the Bald Brad Show, please make sure you hit the subscribe button. It is free, as well as the bell notification button, so you're notified whenever we go live, which is every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And with that being said, our lead story of the day comes from our friends over at Blaze Media. It is written by Paul Sacca, and he titles it, "Baltimore Students Who Failed This Year Will Still Pass. Maryland Lieutenant Governor warns it's going to be even worse." Now, many of you know I am an educator. I teach mathematics. Specifically this year, I'm teaching Algebra 2, Statistics, and Consumer Math. But it says here, Baltimore students who failed this year during the coronavirus pandemic will not be held back. Instead, they will receive a passing grade and graduate to the next level, the city school board recently announced. I got a lot to say on this because you're not just going to see this in Baltimore, but really you're going to see this all across the United States. And this has massive, and I mean massive, ramifications for our education system, especially in terms of the STEM field. And I'll get into that a little bit in a second. Baltimore students who failed classes during the 2021 school year will still pass on to the next grade level and will not be penalized. The announcement was made during Tuesday's virtual school board meeting. As we approach the end of 2021 school year, we will all recognize that students have experienced incredibly significant challenges and interruptions in their learning, said Baltimore City Public School CEO. With that in mind, the district has developed a fair and straightforward process for evaluating and recording students' progress in the school's current year. That's actually false. It's not fair at all. And I'll tell you why. Maybe in Baltimore, there is an argument to be had here because I'm sure they have what's called high needs or underprivileged schools where maybe not everybody has access to internet. Maybe not everybody has access to an iPad or a notebook, those types of technologies. I'm not saying they do or don't. I'm not too familiar with the Baltimore school system. But what I do want to say here is that it's not fair. The reason why is because a lot of online learning was done through Zoom, as many of you have heard. I taught over Zoom, even though the majority of this year I was teaching in person in the classroom. But again, it's over Zoom. So we teach the content. It is up to the student. It is up to the individual to be there to listen, to take notes, and ultimately do well in the class. And now let's be honest, a lot of the stuff that's done over Zoom, students are just cheating on their tests or their assessments. And we kind of know that. There's nothing that we can do to really monitor it or check for it. There are times where you can see, hey, you know what, you did the same exact problem as this student, and it's actually even in the same handwriting. You just uploaded their document to whatever software you're using. So you can catch somebody cheating in that regards, but mostly we're really aware that students are cheating. I'll give you a prime example. I gave a chapter test. I had almost 100% across the board. And then I gave the next chapter test and everybody's pretty much failing across the board. Well, how do you go from getting almost 100% on assessments to basically on an easier exam getting virtually a failing grade? Well, the reason is because everybody was cheating rather than studying, making sure they're doing their homework and doing everything necessary to score well on those assessments. Now, what happens here, and the reason why I'm saying it's not fair, is because you're going to have students that are actually studying. They're sitting down, they're taking their notes, they're doing the time to do the assignments, and ultimately scoring well in the assessments. But then you have students that are not doing the notes, they're not paying attention during class, and ultimately they're not doing their homework and they're just cheating on the assessments and getting the same grade as somebody that's putting in the effort. So why should somebody that's putting in the effort, doing everything they're supposed to be doing in the school system to get good grades, compared to somebody that's not doing anything in the school system but still is producing a good grade for a short time but then ultimately failing as well? Why should both be passing versus one or the other? And so you're seeing the leftist mentality where it's an equal playing field. Why should the person that's failing not move on when the other person that's not failing is moving on? Well, that's not fair. They should both be moving forward. You're kind of seeing a socialized idea of education happening here in real time. And furthermore, I'm not really seeing too many students being held back regardless, even on a normal year. So I don't know where they're getting this talk of like holding people back. A lot of times there's just remediation where a student can either retake a class, they'll do summer school, or they can remediate a class during their normal school year. For example, say you took Algebra 1 and you failed it. Well, you still need the credits for that mathematics class to graduate and get your high school diploma. So what you would do is you would still maybe advance to, say, Algebra 2, but you would just remediate Algebra 1 and take Algebra 1 while you're taking Algebra 2. And of course, any of you would say, well, Bald Brad, that doesn't make any sense. You don't have the core necessary skills to move on to Algebra 2 because you didn't even pass Algebra 1. So if you didn't succeed in Algebra 1, how the heck would you succeed in Algebra 2? I'm right there with you, especially as the educator. How is this person sitting in my class when they weren't even able to pass the prerequisite class to get here in the first place? Yes, thank you. But that's what we're seeing in our education system. And so it's a consistent problem that's been going on because virtually since Bush was in office with No Child Left Behind, I'm making a slight connection here to it. Again, slight. I'm using that word very specifically, but you're not really having I don't want to use the word demographic because that's not what I'm looking for. You're not having people basically being held back, whether that's white, Asian, African American. The demographic doesn't matter. You're going to see a lot more people probably held back in low income areas is more or less what I'm looking at, maybe than compared to high income areas. But you're not really seeing students held back, and so that's why you're also seeing an issue that's going on in the public school system. But to say that it's fair is a completely misleading statement, and it's a blasphemous lie. Because also, if Common Core was supposed to go throughout basically all the states, well, the idea behind Common Core was, well, there's a good school system, the next neighborhood over, and my student's going to basically not that great of a school system right now. Why is it if my student transfers from a bad school to a good school, they're not going to succeed in that good school, or they might succeed? It doesn't really matter in this analogy or what I'm going to explain here. Common Core idea is, hey, everything's common. Everything is the same. So I should be able to go from one system to another system and be receiving basically the same exact teaching. So that's kind of the overarching big picture of it. Whether I agree with Common Core or not, that doesn't really matter here. My whole thing of it is that everything that Baltimore school system is doing is not going to benefit the student at all. And for you to say that, well, coronavirus was incredibly a hard time for everybody, not for students. Students loved it. My students did half days. I was working twice the amount of hours that I would on a normal school year because students were done at 11 o'clock, and then I'd have a PM group come in and I'd have to teach till 3. So they're getting minimum days for the entire year, half the load, and then I'm left with double the load, double the work. So it doesn't make sense as to why you're just going to pass all these students when I would think that it's probably more of an easier year because you're virtually doing everything virtually, meaning you can literally cheat on everything. And by the way, as somebody that's doing both in person, half in person, half online at times, as well as my own distant learners on times, depending on the class, meaning I have all 3 different types, is you see a difference between those that are online and those that are in class. Those that are online are scoring well because they're online. There's nobody there to monitor them. They could just cheat on everything. So I don't know how you failed during this year just because of COVID. That doesn't make any sense to me. How is COVID stopping from somebody from studying or doing something? Again, I'm speaking very generic here because there are situations where somebody was sick and then the son or daughter has to take care of them, or both family members were sick and the student dropped off. There are many reasons as to why somebody could have failed this year, and I am fully understanding of that. Again, I've even seen it from my end of helping my students succeed even when they have those types of problems. But if you're just going to pass people and blame it on COVID, that is not going to help them next year, and you're going to see worse results next year than you were even this year. It says here, in all of these instances, we want to emphasize the word yet. Not completed yet, no credit yet. Community and school members have been evaluating grading methods that reflect the unique circumstances that Black people have faced. So there you go. You're consistently trying to focus on one group, and you have, just because you're going to benefit this group right here, you're going to end up hurting other groups as well, other racial groups, if you want to call it that. And this is something I always talk about when we talk about economic fallacies, is that they look in the short term of benefiting one group and possibly benefiting other groups as well. But usually that's not the case, hence why it's called a fallacy, where you're benefiting one group and you're going to end up hurting everybody else. The problem with this is you're not actually helping Black people at all, nor are you helping white people, Asian people. You're not helping people in general, regardless of race. Again, as a conservative thought, a conservative ideology, I should say, we don't care about race. We care about the individual and their intellectual thinkings and the morality and the things that they do. That's what we care about, regardless of race. So I don't know why they're just contributing this to Black people. I understand that's Baltimore. But what I'm saying here is that you're going to end up hurting all students. This is not a good thing. Look, if a student didn't pass, regardless of the pandemic or not, they should not be moving forward. The reason why is they don't have the foundational skills to move on to the next subject. Now, you can make a case for any other subject outside of the STEM field. I get that there are certain things that you can move on and move forward to. There's certain things that you can't even within those subjects. I'm specifically talking from a mathematics standpoint here, and also chem and maybe a physics standpoint. I don't teach those subjects, but I have friends that do. It requires mathematical skills as well. You're going to be damaging these students, and there's no way that they're going to be able to pass unless they put in twice the amount of effort to learn what they had to learn in the previous year during COVID. And now they're going to have to learn certain things in this year as well. You're setting them up for failure, and this is a terrible thing that the administration is doing. And some people, well, isn't it terrible to hold them back? Yes, but that's not anybody's fault, but one, the parents, and two, the student. You cannot blame the teacher. In some situations you can, but predominantly teachers are not just sitting back and not teaching. Many can go, well, they're not teaching over Zoom, they're not doing certain things. There's still thousands of videos online that somebody can watch and learn all the material. There's videos that virtually every subject, thousands of teachers across the United States now had to upload their lecture videos on teaching, and students can watch those lecture videos and end up doing their work. Now, to say, well, my student can't sit there for 30 minutes and watch a video, yada, 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 that's just an excuse. If you want your student to succeed, if you want your son or daughter to succeed, then you need to be there and push them to do well in school so they can get a good education. There's not much of a difference instructional wise, especially when in terms of directional teaching. I'm being very specific on my language during this episode in terms of the education system, okay? So very consistent in my language. In terms of directional teaching, there's nothing different in directional teaching than me talking into a camera and showing the work on a board at the same exact time that I would be sitting in class and doing the exact same thing, okay? The exact same thing that I'd be teaching on camera, almost verbatim in verbiage and language, especially utilizing vocabulary scales, syntax techniques, everything of that would be the exact same thing I'd be doing in class. So to say that there is a difference in instruction outside of answering students' questions in real time, which you could be given class time to do that, you could be doing that virtually as well. There's virtually no difference other than the fact that we're just disconnected around America and we're talking through a camera. I understand, folks. I fully understand every school district is different. How they're handling it is different. But again, I'm talking from my perspective. There's still really no excuse outside of the externalities and the extremes of the pandemic, of what could be going on at home specifically, to why somebody couldn't be doing well. And furthermore, I'm mostly talking in regards to probably 8th grade to 12th grade. I'm not necessarily talking about elementary school and things like that. But even so, even in elementary school, when you're learning multiplication and key foundational mathematical skills that you'll need to utilize, like order of operations continually from that point on, you'll still need that as a core foundation to solve mathematical problems when you're in high school and then early on in the college. So this, I can't emphasize this enough. This has huge ramifications. And I understand I'm continuing this a little long, but take it from an educator. I'm kind of worried next year, and this is not just me. This is all my peers as well and all my colleagues. We know that what's going to come next year. There's going to be a big storm coming because of what's going on with the education system. And I'd hate to be a teacher in Baltimore right now, because basically you're going to have to fill in all those missing gaps of knowledge that the student didn't know previously in that current year. And quite frankly, statistically, on a statistical basis, I don't know how you would do that. And to even give you more bluntly, it's impossible. Impossible. There's not enough time. There's literally not enough time to teach a previous year's concepts in the current year concepts and get through all the standards that the state wants. It's not possible. So they don't think about those types of things. Oh, cool, willy-nilly, just allow people to pass on through. And again, we see this in a normal year. I've seen people graduate that virtually maybe a week before graduation had all Fs, and then they miraculously are passing grades. It's unbelievable. So people are passing high school without just core basic concepts. That's not everybody, but you're seeing it a lot more and more in time. Again, our education system, I don't want to say it's dumbing down things, but that's kind of the best way I can describe it. They're making things easier. They're not making things harder as time goes on. It says, we're going to avoid the punitive approach to failing students and the difficult reaction to unfairly retain students, she said. Instead, we are going to commit to our students as we plan for a multi-year academic recovery. You're not going to recover from this. And that's the thing, is you just lost an entire year. It was predicated on the student to make sure that they weren't falling behind. And what you're doing is you're rewarding those students for not doing the necessary things they were supposed to do in their education system, and you're moving them forward. So you're building even a bad ethical standard within our education system for how we're treating all of this. So this is not good. Pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade students will have no changes to the grading system. For grades 2 through 5, any student who received an unsatisfactory grade would have it changed to a not complete grade. Students who failed middle school and high school levels would receive a no credit, which means that the student didn't actually pass their school course, but would still advance to the next grade level. Failing students would be given an opportunity to complete their non-credit classes to earn credits over the summer. Maryland's Lieutenant Governor Boyd Rutherford, and I'm definitely saying that wrong, forgive me, sounded the alarm about the possible negative implications of passing children to the next grade level who failed this year during the COVID-19 pandemic. There's so much learning loss that occurred this last year, as well as just people falling through the cracks. I think that we are just pushing a problem down the road that we are all going to deal with, and in another couple years, I think it's creating a major problem and a challenging one going forward. And this person is absolutely right. I don't know. My conversation with my colleagues are, you're going to have to see a shift in probably the standards and reorganization of Common Core because of this year lost. You're talking anybody that started school within 2019, 2020 going forward, you've lost a year of skill. And so you virtually have to reorganize things because you're talking an entire generation that's going to be missing certain mathematical skills, certain scientific skills, certain English skills, all the skills and subject across the board. They're going to be lacking in some way, shape, or form. So you're going to see a massive impact going on with their education system. And I'll keep you up to date, folks. As somebody that's in it, I will keep you up to date. And I can't emphasize this enough, you guys. You hear a lot of things about teachers' unions. You hear a lot of things about this or that, right? Oh, well, teachers shouldn't get this. Teachers shouldn't get back. There's kind of a lot of hate in that regard. As somebody that's in it, just because, and I'm not even in a union, by the way, somebody that's part of a teachers' union, you could still advocate for the things that all of you would want to advocate and for all those things. That doesn't mean that your union's going to push the same things that you want. Because on a collective basis, if the majority per se or the union leaders want something, then they're going to push for that. Whether you agree with it or not, they're going to do it. I know for me, a lot of teachers that I know, especially in Southern California, and maybe it's just because I'm a conservative, maybe conservative teachers tend to hang around with me more than left-leaning teachers, but I know even a lot of left-leaning teachers wanted to be back in the classroom. So you're more or less just hearing the ones that shout a lot, right? More like the leftists that you hear shout to the streets and to the skies about America's racist, America's evil, all these other things. They kind of shout so loud where you don't even hear everybody else. And I think that's what you're kind of hearing in the education system in terms of teachers. I know for myself, I've been teaching since August. There was maybe tiny moments and spurts of going into a distance learning, but you're talking maybe a week to 2 weeks at a time at most. And that maybe happened like twice. Other than that, in the classroom the entire time, no issues, no problems. Felt safe and secure the entire time. Loved teaching in person, not an issue. But there were teachers that didn't want to go back. They wanted all these safety measures, all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But again, I think they were shouting so loud where it was kind of dwarfing and silencing everybody else that wanted to go back in the classroom. And I firmly believe that was a lot of teachers. So don't kind of always look at the unions to be in alignment with kind of all the other teachers. I think, again, everybody that I know virtually wanted to be back in the classroom or was already back in the classroom. They didn't want to do virtual learning. And also, we didn't want to do virtual learning in the first place because it was more work for us, drastically more work for us. You're actually not seeing a lot of teachers even doing summer school because we're so kind of spent on the amount of work that we were doing before. Now, a lot of people, oh, you guys have summers off, you have all these breaks and all these other things. That has nothing to do with it. If, for example, if you have an online class, right, you still have to teach during the day, but then when you're done with work, you still have to go home or you're already at home. You have to make lecture videos. I teach 3 different subjects. A lecture video is not just a simple, oh, well, why don't I just sit down for 30 minutes and draw some stuff up? You have to lesson plan. You have to create the notes. You have to make sure the notes outlines are something that's suitable for the students to be able to follow. Then you have to record the video. You have to make sure the video is in a certain time length. You can't make any errors in the video. If you do make any errors in it, then you got to edit it. You got to change it, right? And that's for one subject. You're talking a couple hours minimum for just one lesson for one class. If you teach 3 subjects, you're talking another 5 to 6 hours of work right there. That doesn't include grading. That doesn't include time outside to make sure you're helping your students outside of class. So this whole thing of like, well, teachers are done at 2:30, they're done at 3 o'clock is I'm gonna cuss here, but that's a bunch of bullshit. Teachers are working well into the AM range. A lot of times students are replying to teachers going, why are you emailing me back students will email you at all hours of the day. You'll get an email 11:30, 1 a.m. Doesn't matter. And they'll go, whoa, I wasn't expecting you to be awake. Why are you awake? Well, we're still working at that time. Then we got to wake up for work in the morning and all these other things. So the whole idea that this year was all easy for teachers and stuff like that, I think it was hard for everybody, but I just want to make that aware. The union thing didn't really have anything to do with this article and this news story per se. But if you guys have any questions as far as my perspective on what I think is going on, as far as the education system, as far as what's happening with COVID in the education system, anything of that sort, leave me a comment. Even if you have an article that you want my opinion on in education, throw that in the comments and I'll be happy to answer it. I'm just going to give you a truthful answer. Again, I'm not a part of a union. I'm not unionized. So I'm just going to give you kind of the straightforward, nitty-gritty answer. Also in the news, speaking of kind of those that are shouting to the skies, the woke leftist culture, dwarfing kind of everybody else, we have here a article from the Daily Wire. As always, if you're not a member of the Daily Wire, please go over and become a subscriber today. This is written by John Brown. This is Blue's Clues going woke, folks. It says children's show Blue's Clues featured Pride Parade, cartoon drag queen, children explaining pride flags. So not only are you getting the indoctrination in the school system, not only are you getting the indoctrination in the music industry, not only are you getting the indoctrination just in the social fabric alone, but now you're also getting the indoctrination in the entertainment system, specifically Nickelodeon, or Nick Jr. is what they call it here. So for leftists to say, well, you don't understand our arguments, you don't read enough about the leftist perspective, you don't know this about leftism. Look, conservatives and Republicans, or even independents, anybody that's not a leftist or a Democrat, grows up in the culture of the left. That's all we learn in the school system, is things of the left. So for somebody to be conservative in today's world is truly remarkable, because you have to actually expand outside of the beliefs of the leftist system that you grew up in, or the milieu of the leftist system that you grew up in. And you have to really challenge your thoughts and the beliefs that you were taught your entire life, which takes more effort and more work. It says here, Blues, Clues, and You, which is a Nick Jr. cartoon for young children, recently featured an LGBT pride parade with non-binary animals and a cartoon drag queen to celebrate Pride Month. Wasn't that just lovely? Your kid walking up, Mommy, what's an LGBT, QRS, elemental P, QRS, pride parade, and non-binary animals? These children barely understand what an animal is, let alone a pride parade, let alone LGBT. I mean, they're still learning the alphabet, some of them, at this time while they're watching this show. And you're already pushing this on them. You're already trying to manipulate their thinking. You're already trying to manipulate their reality to think that people and animals are binary, meaning male or female. You're trying to make them think they can be anything they want to be, as long as they're in between. They're not zeros and ones. It's not binary. It's just anything that you can imagine you can be in today's society. It says the parade features a cartoon version of Nina West, which is the drag name of Andrew Levitt, who narrates as float after float of LGBT animals passes by. First is a lesbian gator family, followed by a gay bear family. After then comes non-binary dolphins, transgender beavers, as well as various other asexual, bisexual, and pansexual animals. Quote, love is love, you see, and everyone should love proudly, and we all go marching in the big parade, the drag queen says. I'm all for loving each other. I don't know who's saying you're not loving each other. The thing conservatives have a problem with this is that you're consistently just shoving it down our throats and throwing it in our children's faces, when your job is not to educate our children on LGBTQ stuff or manipulate the reality that our children are growing up in to make it seem like you could just be, you need to be male or female. You could be anything in between, and preferentially male and female doesn't exist according to the leftist argument. So you're trying to push this upon people's children when you should leave it up to the parent to push that, or leave it up to the parent if they want to teach their children that. But now you're seeing this. Before, you didn't really see it that much within children's shows, where children slowly were getting it in the classroom as they grow up, having to do assignments on LGBTQ, pride, all these other things. And now they're getting it in their cartoon shows. And unbeknownst to parents, parents put on the TV just to give their kids entertainment and maybe some quiet for a little bit, to be able to go do something, maybe take a nap or continue their work, or do dishes, clean around the house, instead of having to watch their kid 24/7. Hey, watch some TV. The educational shows that used to be on the TV were actually really good for kids, but now they're educating them in a different field, in a different realm, basically. And now it's kind of manipulating the kids and basically questioning the kids who are already struggling to understand the culture, who are already struggling to understand the environment around them. At that age, especially from the time you're born to the age 4, is a time where they're really understanding the argument. The brain is really forming. Obviously, it doesn't fully form until later on into the 20s. But what I'm trying to say is a lot of damage can be done through this show with these early kids watching this type of show, these young kids watching this show. As Yahoo News reported, Linz Ammer of the Great Kids video series Queer Kid Stuff consulted on the Blue's Clues video, which takes us marching along the Pride route one by one, then two by two, etc., showcasing different families along the way. It's a terrific celebration of families and goes further than many kids shows in its range of queer inclusion. I thought we couldn't use that word queer anymore. So that's what's confusing, is like one day the word is okay, the next day the word isn't okay. One day you can use gay, the other time you can't use gay. One time you can use queer, then you can't use queer. And that's the problem with it. It's ever changing, it's ever manipulative, and I don't think the leftists really know when you can use it and when you can't use it. I think there's going to be leftists out there that use the word queer, but then you talk to another leftist on a TV show and they're saying that you're freaking a bigot if you use the word queer. Nobody can keep up with this stuff. It's confusing as hell. Blue's Clues and You also recently featured a special video titled Celebrating Pride Month with Blue and Josh, opening mail. I don't know why they're just labeling them as Blues and Josh. Is that their pronouns they would like to use? Did you ask Blue if he wanted the pronoun of being called Blue? Maybe he wanted to be purple or pink that day. What about Josh? Why is his name Josh? Did you confirm with Josh that was what his pronoun was going to be? It wasn't going to be Z, her, him. It's just unbelievable here. I don't see anything in there of you asking their permission, during which very young children instructed their viewers about LGBT families and what the different pride flags mean. A young boy showed off pictures of him attending a pride parade with his 2 lesbian mothers. My brother and my mom and I go to a parade, and we dance like this, he says beneath a rainbow and LGBT flag. As a pride parade, we get to see all different kinds of families, the boy continues. Some have 2 moms like I do, some have 2 dads, some have a mom and a dad, and some go by they. Some families have 1 parent, and some have a lot of people in the family. There's all kinds of different kinds of families. They love celebrating pride with mine. My thing is, why are you labeling it as mom and dad? Why are you labeling it as male and female then? I mean, that would be the connection, right? Why else use, again, mom and dad or father and mother when father is predominantly labeled as a male and a mother is predominantly labeled as a female? So there's no male or female. If it's non-binary, then they wouldn't be considered male and female because that can't exist, right? If it's non-binary, it's not a 0 and 1s anymore, you guys. It's like quantum mechanics going on here. But I'm speaking too logical for the leftists here. And look, are there people that do lie in between that have both appendages? Yes. But predominantly those people with both appendages, one tends to kind of be more exaggerated than the other one. And so you could still identify that person objectively by looking at what they carry and know this person probably is a female or this person is probably a male. Furthermore, even if you go beyond that, yes, there are scenarios beyond that, but that is an extreme outlier and externality, and we have cases for that and for that person. But to push this kind of stuff on children at this age, to me, is extremely wrong. And so for parents out there with children, I would say watch out for Blue's Clues now or Nick Jr. because it's all going woke. Blue did not used to be woke, but now Blue and Josh are going towards the woke leftist agenda as well as Nickelodeon. So I'm not saying boycott the shows or boycott Nickelodeon and the programming, just saying look out for what you're watching for that day and maybe monitor your kids a little bit more because now they might be indoctrinated when you don't think that they are. Also in today's news, this is somewhat big news. It's kind of carrying on with the Iran story. This also comes from the Daily Wire. It is written by Emily Zanotti. Previously, I was talking about the Iran gunships that were swarming the U.S. Warships that we had as the warships were basically escorting another vessel. And they were kind of screwing with us, coming pretty close to our warships. And we kind of shot some rounds off above their bow to kind of give them some warning shots to say, hey, back off. My opinion on it was blow them out of the water. They have no reason to be screwing with us like that. And the only reason they are screwing us with like that, or screwing with us like that, is because they know they can get away with it, that we're just going to fire some warning shots. They're going to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. We're going to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And they're going to continue to go on their merry way. The same stuff as the Russians do. Everybody does it to each other. But what I'm saying is Iran is something small. We shouldn't allow them to do that to us, blow them out of the water. I'm okay with that. But here we have U.S. monitoring Iran warships that may be headed to Venezuela with mystery cargo. Maybe it's aliens. I'm kidding. No, but seriously, but it could actually be something pretty detrimental to us, as if you're going to Venezuela or you're heading in that direction, it could mean disastrous ramifications for the U.S. We need to know what that mystery cargo is, so we need to monitor it very closely. It says the United States national security community is reportedly keeping a close eye on 2 Iranian naval vessels that may be headed across the Atlantic Ocean to Venezuela, carrying mystery cargo, according to sources that spoke to Politico, concerned that Iran could be trying to inflame relations with the U.S. at a particularly fraught moment. They're always trying to inflame relations with us. They literally say death to America. They want to kill all of us. They want to develop a nuke and use it on us. So to say that they're just trying to inflame relations, they're always doing this, which is why I brought up the idea of them having Iranian gunships screwing with us and our fleet, and we need to stop allowing this crap to happen, because they're going to continually do it. And like I said last time, one of these times it's going to be like the boy who cried wolf, be like, oh, it's just the Iranians again and their gunships. They're just trying to screw with us, whatever, just ring one off the bow. And next thing you know, they have explosive devices on these ships, and they come up and just blow a hole right into one of our ships here. And now we got a massive issue. A bunch of guys just died because you wanted to be knuckleheads and just allow these guys to do whatever the hell they want and seize that they don't control, and we do. The U.S. national security community is monitoring 2 Iranian naval vessels, whose ultimate destination may be Venezuela, according to 3 people familiar with the situation, in what would be a provocative move and a tense moment in U.S.-Iran relations, the outlet said Sunday. An Iranian frigate and the Makran, a former oil tanker that was converted to a floating forward staging base, have been heading south along the east coast of Africa, said the people, who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss a sensitive subject. Forgive me, I'm getting a really bad glare going on right now. U.S. officials do not know for sure the destination of the Iranian ships. These officials said, but believe they may be ultimately headed for Venezuela. Iran's intent in sending vessels in the direction of the Western Hemisphere remains a mystery. The people said, as does their cargo, Politico noted. Basically saying, why are they coming even in this direction? They have no business to be coming over here. What's the agenda going on? What's happening right here? And we need to figure it out. The 2 countries, both of them facing severe U.S. sanctions, have developed, closer ties over the last few years, with cooperation ranging from gasoline shipments to joint car and cement factory projects. The oil tanker that was converted is particularly of concern to American officials after Iran made a point of claiming that the ship could serve as a mobile command platform from which Iran could launch electronic warfare efforts and handle special operations. The ship reportedly serves as also a floating air base, which a fleet of drones and helicopters could ultimately come and take off from. The Iranian military has threatened Americans' interests recently, most notably in April when a group of boats from Iranian elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps harassed 2 U.S. Coast Guard ships earlier this month in the Persian Gulf. So this type of abuse is consistently happening. But, our Navy, thank God, are monitoring this. They're watching it. Hopefully nothing Iran is doing here is ultimately something that can end up hurting the United States or hurting U.S. citizens here. And if it even has the potential, I expect the Biden administration to take hold of this, take the power that they have, and wield it upon these Iranian warships if they're attempting to do anything to us or attempting to create some sort of warfare operations down south, and ultimately having that effect up here up north. It's all speculation at this point, but I wanted to bring this to your attention that Iran is supposedly trying to make moves here, and I hope the Biden administration and our president of the United States go ahead and takes this seriously. And I like to think if we're monitoring it here on a news standpoint and reporting upon it, I'm pretty sure, and I hope to God our president is monitoring this as well. I would like to think he is. And folks, this is where we need a strong president. It is at this time that Biden needs to wake up from his nap. Give the guy some smelling salts that we use in ice hockey and refereeing. Wake the guy up so that he knows what's going on. We want him to protect our country. I want him to succeed so badly. He's just continually, though, making the wrong decisions time and time again. He may not be posting stupid crap on the internet. He's leaving that up to his vice president because today is Memorial Day, and she's saying have a nice 3-day weekend on Memorial Day. Very idiotic thing to post. I don't think she was thinking at that time. But we do need to respect our men and women in uniform, especially the ones that give up the biggest sacrifice, which is why I'm able to utilize free speech through the internet with all of you. The men and women that serve this country are some of the bravest men and women that ever roamed our earth in human history, and we have nothing but gratitude and thankfulness to them for ultimately giving up their life for our freedom today. They pay the ultimate sacrifice so we can sit here and have our freedoms and our liberties every single day, even though we feel like we're fighting for that, through discussion and free speech. They fought that with their lives, and we have nothing but, again, gratitude, love, and respect for them and their family members and their parents and guardians, everybody that's involved in upbringing that person that went and fought for this great nation. But here, we need to monitor this type of stuff and hope that our president is watching out for this, and I think that they are. But folks, that is all the news I have for you today. I hope all of you have a blessed Memorial Day. Let's all take a moment today, regardless of your faith, to pray for the men and women that served our country so valiantly and gave up their life for this God-given great nation of ours here. And I hope that God may bless those that have moved on into the afterlife, and that God may bless the United States of America. Folks, I thank you so much for your time and your commitment to the Bald Brad Show, and I'll see you tomorrow here on the Bald Brad Show.